Hey there everybody, my name's Richard and I'm the Board Game Evangelist. So what I wanted to do in this video is introduce myself and kind of share about my board game story, and then also kind of tell you what this channel is really going to be trying to do here. So as far as my story, I ended up coming across the Dice Tower videos in 2015. Before then I had no idea that there was a modern board game industry and a lot of people were playing board games. And so as a child, my parents actually bought me Hero Quest and we played that as a family. Other than that, I pretty much played games like Mastermind and Monopoly and the standard stuff, and it wasn't very often, it was just a few times a year or whatever, so it wasn't like we were a board game family. But I did play a substantial amount of video games, not only on the computer with my dad, like RPGs like Betrayal at Krondor, Baldur's Gate 2, things like that, but also consoles all the way from Nintendo up to about Xbox, the first Xbox. I played video games for a large portion of my childhood up to, I'd say, around the age of 16 or so. And then I took a pretty decent break from that with just occasional playing. And then I tried to kind of get back into it in my early 20s. And it really wasn't something that I saw, that especially the first person shooters, folks were popping people so fast, and I was just like, there's no way I'm gonna really want to put in the effort to regain my hand-eye coordination to be that good at video games. And the problem with single player video games is I would often, even as a child, get to about halfway through the game and it would get so hard and it would become kind of monotonous in what you were doing, to the point where I usually just played video games up to a certain point and never really finished them. So video games weren't necessarily my thing, besides a heavy playing of like GoldenEye, Halo, Mario Kart, things like that whenever I was a child. So at that point I really didn't have any hobbies. I didn't have any kind of gaming hobbies at the time in 2015, and I came across those videos and I was just super intrigued and started watching all of the top 10s that they had out at the time and started picking up a collection and playing. And I just absolutely fell in love with board gaming. And for those first 4 or 5 years, I ended up really just wanting to experience the gaming world, right? I just wanted to play as many games as I could from different themes and different mechanics and things like that. So I ended up amassing the collection of about 107 games, and I also ended up playing at that time, probably about 350 unique board games, just playing at people's houses or at conventions or whatever. And then something happened. I ended up getting to a place where that 107 games really felt kind of stressful on my life, because it was like chasing a tail. It was constantly chasing, trying to play those games in a reasonable time and actually play the games on my shelf. And it was really stressful in a way, because I wanted to get my money's worth and I wanted to not forget the rules before I had to play it again and read the rule book all over again. And so what ended up happening is I ended up doing a major cull in 2019, getting down to about 50 board games. And then in 2020, the pandemic hit, and obviously board gaming kind of stopped for a little while. But even at that time, my mind frame had changed from, I want to experience all these different mechanics and these themes, to the point where I had like kind of done it for the most part. And what I wanted out of the hobby really changed to a place where it was like, I want to have a reasonable amount of games that I can play in a nice rotation and really grow in, right? Because that's really what, even at the beginning, but especially now, I really loved out of board gaming, and that is personal growth. That is playing a game and actually seeing what it has to offer and digging into the combos and the strategies that are there to continue to progress and grow in that game and get better and fully explore it versus just constantly playing new games and seeing what they were. And also I kind of did like I do with everything, which is I kind of went old man status and said, they just don't make games like they did back in my day, right? So not to say that I don't find occasional games that are good and I'm interested in, but really I like a lot of the stuff that was out in the early 2010s because I played those first, and really from 2010 to about 2018, that's the extent of most of my collection. I haven't really added any real new games, or very few, after that 2018 time frame. So, and that's another thing about me, is I went from being okay with just mechanics to really wanting that in-depth theme, right? The theme is important to me, but I also want a game there. I don't want just, roll dice to see who wins, even though I do have some of those games. But I really like good mechanics with a good theme and good art, which subjective the art is. It's something that obviously I have a certain style of art that kind of looks a little bit more mature most of the time. Obviously I got Imperial Settlers behind me here, and that there are some exceptions, maybe more from a nostalgia, but for the most part I'm looking for a little bit more mature art style, and so all of that has kind of developed through playing board games, and I've changed. Now in 2020, what happened was the pandemic hit, and it kind of puttered out in-person board gaming. So I ended up finally breaking one of those things that wasn't a huge fan of, which is online board game playing, right? So I started playing a game called Netrunner right here, which I was going off on another side tangent here. I was always considering myself a board game and really didn't have a good attitude towards CCGs and LCGs at the time for those first 5 years, and I was collecting Netrunner when I could, grabbing random packs, obviously not having everything I needed to really explore a meta, if you will, but just grabbing packs sometimes and continuing to build that in hopes that I could find somebody to play Netrunner with. And unfortunately I missed the opportunity to play all these games in person while they were still going and people were really competitive with them, and so but I finally started playing Netrunner online, and I found a group called GLC, a Discord server, Green Level Clearance, and I found a good community that played some weird formats and limited formats and things like that, and I started playing on there and was able to find games with people with limited card pools and things like that. So, and I also just played on the website Jinteki.net. And at that time, I ended up creating a YouTube channel called Noob Runner, and I did that for probably, I don't know, eight months or so. But I started broadcasting my videos and also presenting material that would help show how people could get into the community and play games and their different options for playing different formats and all of that. And I did that for about 8 months. And at the time, I had another shift in what I wanted out of board games. I really wanted to see how far I could get. So I took that level, that desire for progression in the board games that I like, to a place of, I want to see if I can put in enough time and I'm smart enough to get to a competitive level in this game. And I put down about 1,000 games in a year and a half time, and I still was pretty mediocre, if not bad, at Netrunner. And I came to a realization that there's no way I can put in the amount of work, and I don't really believe that I have a super analytical brain to the level of some of these guys, where I can identify card strengths and do all that math, and also make like the best play almost all the time, And so that dream, I got to a place where I realized where I was, and I was okay with that. But it kind of led me to no longer be putting in the amount of time that I was on Netrunner. Now I spend, I play 4 to 6 games a week, which is still more than I play any other game. But I play it for fun, and I continue to kind of progress and grow, but I don't have any kind of timeline that I'm really working for to get to this level or any goal of where I get to. I just want to continue to see progression and knowledge of the card pool in that game. Now, I know I've been going on for a minute here, but the next step in this evolution was I just fell in love with the unique themes and the mechanics of dead LCGs, and we'll get into this in future videos, what dead actually means, because several of these games are still being played with communities and still being supported by fan-based communities with new content or balances and things like that. So we'll get into that for each of these games in future videos. But ultimately, unfortunately, I missed it when these games were alive and well and people were at game stores near me playing. But I fell in love with them, and I just have been collecting these 6 games here, right here, these 6 FFG LCGs for the past, few years, getting almost full collections for some of them, full collections for others, and for like Warhammer Invasion, I have a small card pool, but it's still enough that it would take me a long time to really work through it as I would want to. So, so that said, I have really explored all of the FFG LCGs except for one, which is Call of Cthulhu. And with Call of Cthulhu, that one doesn't necessarily register to me yet. I said the same thing about Game of Thrones until I finally watched the show, and next thing you know, I was very interested in grabbing that one up too, and so I did. So who knows if that changes, but at this point I really don't have any interest in going back and following up with Call of Cthulhu. But the other 6 here, competitive LCGs, I have just fallen in love with as my favorite games. So at this point I have a collection of about 35 games, and to include my LCGs here. And I pretty much have the understanding that I can basically enjoy the content of these games, maybe adding one every year or two, maybe trading. There's a couple that are on the trading block, and I'm okay with that. But for the most part, I'm super content with my collection, and I just want to play these games over and over again and explore their depths and learn all about them and read articles about them and learn the cards and learn, the game to a level of somewhat expertise, even though I don't think I can get there. But that is really what I want out of the hobby these days. And I just want to share with you guys in upcoming videos how much what I think about these LCGs. I want to rank these LCGs first and foremost for you and give you a little background on them and kind of compare them as to if you like this, you might like that, things like that. So that's going to be my first videos here, is discuss the competitive FFG LCGs, and then I'll do another few videos, or at least one video on the cooperative LCGs as well. After that, I'll probably be going into these board games behind me here and kind of talking about things like organization, component upgrades, reviews, strategies, any other number of topics that I come up that I want to touch with on these games, to really highlight them and show you why I love them and what I've done to make those even better, because these are the games I've kind of chosen to, invest in. And so that's pretty much my story. I know I got off on some side tangents, but I really want you to understand where I'm coming from so that you can understand where my reviews are coming from and where my videos are coming from. And I just wanted to tell you why I'm kind of starting to do this right now and kind of what the goal is. So I hope you join me with the ranking of the competitive FFG LCGs, and y'all have a great day.